My husband and best friend were helping me prepare for my birthday when they were suddenly hit by a car. By the time I rushed to the hospital, their bodies had already been sent for cremation. My best friend's daughter wept, saying she had lost her mother forever. Consumed by guilt, I treated her with endless kindness, even transferring most of my assets to her. But after acquiring my wealth, she pushed me off a cliff. I miraculously survived, but lost the use of both legs. After enduring countless hardships, I finally crawled back home, only to see my long-dead best friend and husband walking intimately into my house together. I chased after him to confront him, and my husband gave me a mocking laugh. "Who told you to make me sign that prenuptial agreement, saying I wouldn't get a single cent if you died? Now it's perfect, all your money belongs to me." My best friend also smiled at me, thanking me for raising the daughter she'd had with my husband. Hearing this, I was so furious that I died on the spot. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day of their car accident. "Victoria, I still want to see Wendy, one last time, please." My best friend's voice came intermittently through the receiver. The honking sounds from the phone overlapped with the ambulance sirens outside the window. In my daze, I nearly collapsed. The secretary beside me quickly steadied me and cautiously asked, "Boss, what happened?" I looked down at my legs, intact rather than broken and mangled, and pinched myself hard. The sharp pain made me realize with clarity, I had truly been reborn. In my previous life, I was in the middle of negotiating a business deal when I received a call from my best friend Yvonne. She told me they had originally planned to surprise me by organizing a birthday party, but they had been involved in a severe car accident on the way. Her husband died on the spot, and she was barely clinging to life, wanting to see her daughter one last time. But after searching everywhere her daughter could possibly be, I finally found her in a remote park. By the time I rushed to the hospital, it was too late. Yvonne and her husband had already been sent for cremation. All that was left for me were 2 small urns and 2 death certificates, while Yvonne's daughter Wendy wailed uncontrollably, saying she had lost her mother. Feeling guilty, I took Wendy home and provided her with the best education, even giving her everything that rightfully belonged to my own daughter. My daughter argued fiercely with me, accusing me of favoritism, but I simply thought she was being immature and failing to understand Wendy's pain after losing her mother. To support both children, my workload grew heavier, and I became increasingly impatient with my daughter. After a heated argument, she declared she would sever ties with me forever and disappeared without another word. Heartbroken by her rejection, I ultimately decided to let Wendy inherit my property when she turned 18. But the very next day after completing the legal transfer, Wendy invited me on a hike, only to push me off a cliff. I was lucky to escape with my life, but both my legs suffered comminuted fractures and could not be healed. After reporting to the police, the case couldn't be filed due to insufficient evidence. Then I discovered all my accounts had been frozen, and my relationship with Wendy was erased overnight. In the blink of an eye, we went from mother and daughter to complete strangers. After enduring countless hardships to return home, I wanted to ask why. But there, at my doorstep, I saw my best friend who had supposedly died 10 years ago, intimately arm in arm with my husband, moving into my villa. Wendy affectionately called them Mom and Dad as I frantically crawled over to see what was happening. Yvonne and her husband looked at me in surprise, clearly not expecting me to still be alive. "You? Weren't you both dead? What the hell is going on? Why is Wendy calling you Mom and Dad?" I asked in confusion, refusing to believe the worst possible answer. Seeing my devastated state and bewildered expression, my husband burst into laughter. "Of course Wendy is mine and Yvonne's daughter. You actually believed we were dead without even seeing our bodies? Who told you to make me sign that prenup, saying I wouldn't get a penny if you died? Well, now all your money is mine." Yvonne also laughed, then kicked a moldy bread from the garbage pile toward me, saying it was a token of gratitude for raising their daughter. My dead husband was good for nothing, but Henry was amazing. He got me pregnant with Wendy in just one try. And Wendy didn't let us down. She made you earn us more money than we could spend in several lifetimes. From now on, our family will live a life of luxury together. They stepped over my crippled leg and entered the villa as torrential rain poured down. Only then did I realize their entire scheme had been about stealing my fortune. I was furious to death on the spot, and at the thought of it, hatred surged in my heart. In my past life, you faked your deaths. This time, I'll make sure you die for real. The phone emitted a dial tone. Meeting my secretary's anxious gaze, I snapped back to reality and instructed. Check which hospital just admitted car crash patients. Their names are Yvonne and Henry. In my previous life, I wasted time searching everywhere for Wendy and missed my chance to go to the hospital, letting their scheme succeed. I won't make the same mistake this time. Boss, just checked, they're at Central City Hospital. Good, let's go immediately. Also, send someone to find Wendy. When I arrived at the hospital, my husband's best friend Miles stopped me at the entrance, anxiously asking why Wendy wasn't with me. He's the chief physician at this hospital, and it was him who rushed Yvonne and my husband here for emergency treatment right after the car accident. Yvonne's last wish before dying was to see Wendy. Victoria, you. Miles had tears streaming down his face, his expression full of grief, yet his body forcefully blocked my path into the hospital building. In my previous life, it was he who eventually handed me the death certificates and ashes of my husband and Yvonne. He even comforted me, saying the children and Wendy needed me. I was overwhelmed with gratitude and even helped him secure the position of deputy director. Now it's clear, he was also an accomplice in this staged death. You're saying my husband and Yvonne are both dead? Impossible, absolutely impossible. I feigned heart-wrenching despair, my loud cries drawing the attention of those around us. Miles saw more and more people looking their way and had no choice but to produce the death certificate. Look, it's all clearly written here. I snatched the certificate from him and broke down in tears, pulling at Miles urgently. Take me to see them now, hurry. Miles stood frozen, his eyes darting nervously toward the entrance. Wendy would definitely want to see Yvonne one last time too. Let's wait for her together. I yanked him forcefully toward the elevator. I've already sent people to look for her, but there's no news yet. Please, just let me see them now. The other patients couldn't bear to watch and all tried to persuade her. A passing nurse even added that according to the time of death, arrangements for cremation should be made immediately. If she didn't see him now, she'd never get another chance. Miles couldn't stand the pointing fingers and whispers around them, so he had no choice but to take me to the ward first. I rushed in and pulled back the white sheet. Yvonne and her husband's corpses were covered in shockingly realistic wounds. They'd done quite a convincing job with the injuries, looking just like the real thing. I threw myself onto their still warm bodies, sobbing and scolding them. I told you not to pull any surprises. What am I supposed to do now that you've left me all alone? I took this opportunity to verify they hadn't been switched, and when I saw my husband's birthmark and Yvonne's mole, I finally felt reassured. I stared at their corpses, recalling the miserable fate of being poisoned by their joint efforts in my previous life. My heart burned with rage as I slapped them hard twice and then pounded them fiercely a couple more times. They lay motionless, as if truly dead. Apparently they had been given anesthesia. Victoria, don't get agitated, quickly grab a sedative. Miles was probably afraid I'd discover their deception, blocking me while calling for the nurse outside the door. I waved him off, took a deep breath. I'm fine, no need for sedatives, it's just hard to accept right now. My husband always said we should look forward. He was right. Our daughter's still so young, we have to keep living well. The most important thing now is to have them cremated. I smiled calmly and reached for the phone to contact the crematorium, but Miles abruptly stopped me. Victoria, Wendy must still want to see Yvonne one last time. When she arrives, I'll immediately arrange the cremation. You're right, but I'm perfectly lucid now. I just want to accompany them on their final journey. I anticipated he would try to stop me. These words were just a feint. Glancing at the summer sun blazing outside the window, I suggested to the guilt-ridden Miles, it's too hot today, and who knows how long it'll take to find Wendy. Husband and Yvonne can't just rot here either, and there are so many patients outside waiting for beds. How about sending them to the morgue? The -20 degrees will definitely preserve their bodies well, and Wendy can still see her mom when she arrives. Miles froze, his mouth opening and closing wordlessly in stunned silence. Seeing he didn't object, I called out to the nurse at the door, "Please call the morgue doctor. They died too horribly in the car crash, they shouldn't suffer mosquito bites anymore." She shot another glance at the secretary and instructed, "Go see if you can help." Miles looked anxious and was about to speak when I cut him off, patting the sofa considerately. "Let's sit and wait together. You've been running around all day, you must be exhausted. Take a quick rest." He was practically pacing like an ant on a hot griddle. "But I'm not familiar with hospital procedures. If something goes wrong, my husband is your best friend, after all." My voice carried a pleading tone as Miles reluctantly took a seat. I gave a faint smile while glancing at the latest message on my phone, raising my hand to reply, "Stop her. Don't let her come to the hospital. The people I sent have already found Wendy, she's near the hospital." Remembering my past life, the remote park where Wendy was last found was close to the crematorium, and now she's reappeared near the hospital again. Most likely, she was involved in the entire fake death scheme, and hiding her from me was just to buy time. Since she enjoys hiding everywhere, this time I'll make sure she can't come even if she wants to. The extreme cold of the morgue will freeze Yvonne and her husband to death in their summer clothes. By the time Wendy arrives, it'll be too late. And for the sake of reputation, both the hospital and Miles will insist they were already dead, sending them to the morgue would be standard procedure. This has nothing to do with me, they'll have no choice but to swallow their losses silently. The morgue staff arrived quickly. Under the secretary's direction, the orderlies helped load Yvonne and her husband into body bags in no time. Miles wanted to rush forward to stop them but was held back by the staff. "We just checked the death certificate, it should have been sent long ago." As the attending physician, weren't you aware? Seizing the moment of his speechlessness, I anxiously said to the staff, "My husband was terrified of bugs when he was alive, the slightest germ would make him sick. Please hurry and send them to be frozen so my husband can suffer less in death." They nodded in understanding and swiftly wheeled the 2 body bags into the morgue. Just as they were about to open the freezer to place them inside, a clear cry rang out, "No, give my mommy back to me." I saw Wendy's figure darting away, my face turning cold as my phone buzzed with a message. "Boss, she slipped through the alley, we couldn't stop her." Wendy rushed into the morgue, shoving aside the staff, yanking open the body bag, and clutching Yvonne's lifeless form. Quick-witted, I seized the initiative with a wail, "Wendy, you wretched girl, where did you disappear to? Your mother wanted to see you one last time, but we searched everywhere. Husband, Yvonne, how could you abandon us, leaving me a widow and this child motherless?" At this point, Wendy hadn't yet developed the cunning of 10 years later. She froze for a moment before shouting at me, "Stop being so hypocritical. You're the one who killed Mommy. If she hadn't been preparing for your birthday, how could she have gotten into that car accident?" I looked at her with wounded eyes. "Wendy, how could you accuse me like that? Your mom said she was traveling, and your dad said he was on a business trip. How was I supposed to know they were planning a birthday surprise?" The people around us exchanged meaningful glances after hearing my words. Miles quickly intervened, "Don't be angry, Victoria. Wendy's just not herself right now. She must want to spend more time with her mom. Why don't you go rest for a while?" "I'll stay here with her," I offered. Wendy nodded pitifully in agreement, looking just like a bullied puppy. In my previous life, she was exactly like this too, and every time, I'd end up feeling overwhelmingly guilty. But later, I learned that the very next second, she would be sowing discord between me and my daughter. I nodded understandingly and earnestly suggested, "It's too hot out, we wouldn't want bacteria to spread. How about we put them all in the freezer? Wendy can keep them company too." "No." 3 voices rang out simultaneously, the mortuary staff shaking their heads in urgent frustration. "All remains are recommended for immediate cremation. We were only waiting earlier for family members to see them one last time. Now that all relatives are present, proceed with cremation immediately." Don't unnecessarily occupy public resources, there are others waiting in line outside. I nodded in agreement, that was exactly my thought earlier. I've already contacted the funeral home, they should arrive shortly. Since Wendy has already said her final goodbye, it's better to cremate soon given this hot weather. No sooner had I finished speaking than the funeral staff entered. Before anyone could react, I motioned for them to carry the body away immediately. Wendy rushed over and screamed, "Where are you taking my mom?" The funeral home staff pulled her hand away and said, "Don't make trouble, little girl. Your mom will watch over you from heaven." The hospital gurney happened to block Miles and Wendy's path. I quickly said to Miles, "Wendy must be heartbroken. Please take care of her, and I'll handle the rest." I swiftly boarded the funeral home vehicle, giving them no chance to catch up. Staring at the two people I once trusted most, my heart was filled with nothing but hatred. After my death, my soul didn't immediately dissipate. I drifted back to my daughter's side, watching her deliver takeout to Wendy in her rider's uniform through the pouring rain. Only to see Wendy scorn her in every possible way, threatening to leave a bad review. The food container was thrown to the ground, and my daughter was slapped hard across the face. My heart ached to rush over, but it was no use. In the end, they forced my daughter to drop out of school, sold her to an old man, where she met a tragic end. While I was still lost in the agony of that past life, Yvonne's eyes suddenly flew open. "Victoria, where am I? Where's Wendy? I'm not dead. Where are we going? Let me out of this car." Yvonne stared at me in confusion. Smiling, I gripped her throat and said word by word, "I know your death was fake. You've been sleeping with my husband and even had a bastard child together. Expecting me to raise your kid and earn money for you? Dream on." I swung my bag at my best friend's face, and she soon fell unconscious. As the car turned into the funeral parlor, the smile on my face widened. "This time, I'll make sure you die for real." But the crematorium was unusually crowded today. It would take at least an hour before their turn came. I frowned as I pushed through the crowd to find the person in charge at the facility. My husband and best friend died in a car accident, and I have 2 children at home waiting for me to take care of them. Could you please allow us to proceed with the cremation first? I don't want anything to happen to the kids either. The person in charge looked at the chaotic crowd and then at me, my eyes swollen from crying, before coming up with an idea. "If the family is in a hurry, we just got a new furnace, but it's a double one. It'll also cost a lot more. If you can accept that, we can arrange it right now." I paid immediately, and within less than 10 minutes, my husband and Yvonne were pushed straight into the double-decker crematorium furnace. At this very moment, Miles and Wendy rushed into the funeral home, their frantic voices echoing through the hall, "Stop! Don't cremate her!" They kept banging on the crematorium furnace, shouting at the staff to quickly pull the body out. A staff member forcefully pulled them away and sternly said, "This crematorium isn't a place for your games. The family has already completed all procedures. Don't interfere with normal operations." Wendy stubbornly screamed, "I'm the real family member. Her words don't count, hurry up and bring my mother out." The staff member impatiently prepared to start the procedure. "A minor signature isn't valid anyway, step aside quickly." Wendy broke down. She turned and grabbed Miles' clothes. "Uncle Miles, tell me, is my mom still alive? Is she?" Miles opened his mouth but no words came out. I took out the death certificate from my bag and showed it to everyone. "This bears Dr. Miles' personal signature and the official seal of City First Hospital. Miles, you're not going to deny it now, are you? Falsifying documents is a prison-worthy offense." Miles' face changed color several times before finally forcing out a smile uglier than crying. "He's truly dead, how could it be fake?" Wendy shook her head in disbelief, lunging at us viciously. "You're all liars, all murderers." I dodged to the side as she failed to stop her momentum and hit the incinerator switch. The pre-programmed sequence instantly engulfed my best friend and her husband in flames. "Ah!" Wendy let out a desperate scream. But I kept my eyes fixed on the furnace. The two of them seemed to wake up completely from the intense burning pain. Her hand rose slightly, then suddenly dropped with a thud, motionless forever after. Miles was stunned by the sight before him, frantically pounding the button. Pause it. Pause it now. Wendy, finally snapping out of it, grabbed a staff member and begged desperately, I didn't mean to do it, please put out the fire, please save my mom. The staff, encountering such unreasonable family members for the first time, massaged their temples and comforted them. The dead can't return to life. Your behavior is disturbing their peaceful passing. This is our state-of-the-art incinerator, it can't be opened mid-process, but it guarantees complete and thorough cremation. You should go ahead with the burial soon. Take it easy, look ahead, and move past the grief as early as you can. At the staff's words, Wendy rolled her eyes and fainted outright, throwing the workers into chaos. Soon, the cremation was over, and 2 small boxes were placed before us. With a sorrowful expression, I picked up my husband's ashes and headed toward the door. Before leaving, I made sure to leave Miles with one last remark. Told you to keep an eye on Wendy, but you had to bring her here to make a scene and embarrass us. Now she's passed out, you're responsible for taking her to the hospital. Right now, I really can't afford to get tangled up with them any longer because I have far more important matters to attend to. On my way back, I received documents from my lawyer about inheritance and company share transfers. Upon closer inspection, I discovered my husband had been secretly transferring money abroad, his accounts were overseas. Each transfer amount was small, but the total sum was staggering. That money would be enough for him and Yvonne to live comfortably abroad for 10 years. I looked through the transaction details. The first transfer occurred exactly when Yvonne's husband passed away. I never imagined they had been preparing for this day from such an early stage. But now, they'll never get the chance to use it. To prevent Miles and Wendy from causing further trouble, I expedited the inheritance procedures. Within a few days, all the necessary paperwork was completed. I looked up at my husband's urn on top of the wardrobe and smiled contemptuously. You want the bastard child to live a good life? Dream on. All of this will belong only to my daughter. My daughter happened to be spending summer vacation at my parents' house. I drove over to pick her up and told the elderly couple about my husband's unexpected death along the way. Victoria, what will you do without Henry? Should we move in to help take care of the child? My mother was crying her eyes out, keeping her voice low so my still sleeping daughter wouldn't hear. Thinking back to my past life, my relationship with my mother had become extremely strained because of Wendy. She accused me of favoring outsiders and said I'd face retribution sooner or later. Little did I know her words would come true, only by the time I met my tragic end, they had already passed away. When they died, I couldn't even see them one last time because Wendy had an upset stomach. I pushed these thoughts aside. In this life, I won't let those who truly love me leave with regrets again. I held her hand and met her concerned gaze. Dad's health hasn't been good to begin with. You're already exhausted taking care of him. I can handle this alone. My mother wiped her tears, packed my favorite dishes, and saw me and my daughter off with endless reminders as we boarded the car. The scenery outside the window flew past when my silent daughter suddenly spoke. Mom, is Daddy gone? Looking at her gradually reddening eyes, I remembered how in my past life I truly deserved to die, always thinking poor Wendy had lost her mother. But my daughter had lost her father too. She would grieve just the same, feel fear just the same. I leaned over to hug her and coaxed softly, yes, Daddy has gone to the sky and become a star. From now on, it'll just be Mommy accompanying Gigi as she grows up, okay? My daughter nodded in my arms, okay, Mommy, don't leave me. Love me always, I only have Mommy now. Her words pierced my chest like countless needles. Memories from my past life flashed through my mind, how I had pushed my daughter away with my own hands, how I had killed her with my own hands. But some people were simply destined not to let us live peaceful and prosperous lives. Just as the car turned into the driveway, I saw Miles standing at my doorstep with Wendy. Victoria, Wendy has lost her parents now. Yvonne begged you to take care of her, so I brought her here. Miles pleaded in his voice, gently pushing Wendy toward me. Wendy's eyes instantly welled up with tears as she looked at me with pitiful desperation. Aunt Victoria, you were my mom's best friend. She said you were the only person she truly trusted. Please, I beg you, take me in. A cold sneer rose in my heart. The only person she trusted? More like the only person she wanted dead. Seeing me unmoved, she came over and tugged at my sleeve. Can I call you Mom from now on? I don't want to be an orphan. No. My silent daughter suddenly shrieked, pushing her away and clinging to me tightly. My mom is mine alone. Go away. Wendy looked hurt, glancing between her and me before dragging her suitcase to leave. Mom, you said Aunt Victoria would treat me well, that you were the closest of sisters. I couldn't be bothered with her act. Taking my daughter's hand, I opened the front door. Come inside first, all of you. The sunlight was just right at this moment, making the villa's decor even more dazzling. Although Wendy tried hard to conceal it, I could still see the greed in her eyes. Seeing that I had accepted Wendy, Miles breathed a sigh of relief, shaking his head at the doorway and saying, I'll leave her to you, then. I can rest easy now. I have matters at the hospital to attend to, so I'll be on my way. With that, he vanished in the blink of an eye, as if guilty of some crime. My daughter's attention was entirely on Wendy. She shot Wendy a fierce glare, shoved her aside, and strode inside. Wendy took the opportunity to fall to the ground, her luggage scattering everywhere as she sobbed, her shoulders trembling uncontrollably. This scene was exactly the same as in my past life, when I scolded my daughter, how could I raise someone as heartless as you? But this time, I took my daughter's hand and said softly, the limited edition you wanted is already here. Go check it out in your room. My crestfallen daughter instantly brightened up and happily went upstairs. After she left, I pretended to help Wendy up and looked at her pile of luggage. Which room would you like to stay in? Wendy wiped her tears and said obediently, I'll take whichever room Aunt Victoria arranges for me. I don't know what you like, so why don't I show you around and let you choose for yourself? When I took her to my daughter's room, her feet froze in place. A pink canopy bed, stuffed animals covering every surface, and an entire wall of closets overflowing with beautiful little dresses. Wendy's eyes instantly burned with jealousy, resentment, and even hatred. Auntie, can I really choose for myself? She asked. I nodded at Wendy, whose eyes were filled with a desperate longing that bordered on madness. I want to stay in this room, she said. In my previous life, she had chosen the worst nanny room on the first floor, and out of pity, I had let her stay in the room opposite my daughter's. In less than a month, she had made it even more beautiful than my daughter's room. I never expected that without Yvonne and my husband's guidance, she would lose her patience so quickly this time. Dream on. This is my room, get out. My daughter, hearing her words, immediately threw the plush toy in her hand, hitting Wendy right in the face. Wendy covered her reddened forehead and looked at me with resigned pleading. Then I'll just find another room. No need, you can stay in this one, but on one condition, you have to behave. I stared thoughtfully at my emotionally distraught daughter before agreeing. Thank you, Auntie, no, you're my mom now. Absolutely not. Two voices rang out simultaneously. I dragged away my sobbing, tantrum-throwing daughter and motioned for Wendy to move in quickly. By dinner time, my daughter was still sulking, while Wendy had already been waiting at the dining table. She had even cooked the meal herself, earning praise from our housekeeper for her culinary skills. With big, watery eyes, she looked at me and said, Is Gigi angry? Should I go apologize to her? I let out a silent scoff, but what came out of my mouth was, leave her be. Let her reflect alone. You'll accompany me out later. She nodded obediently. She had been all sweetness and attentiveness throughout dinner, but I wondered if she could still utter those sweet nothings later on. We stood by the riverbank, the water reeked of fish and shrimp mingled with the stench of floating trash. Do you know where this river ends? Wendy stared blankly in the direction of the flowing water and shook her head. The river will eventually flow into the sea, and its mouth happens to be the very spot where your father's ashes were scattered years ago. Wendy's face instantly turned ashen. Back then, Yvonne had wanted to save money on buying a grave. She said her husband loved the ocean and wanted to stay in the sea forever, so she scattered all his ashes, with Wendy right there helping. Now I open the urn in her hand, grab a handful of ashes, and scatter them into the river. Yvonne said she loved her husband most in this life, and wanted to stay together with him even in death. This is perfect, meeting again at familiar places. Wendy tries to stop me but can't find a reason. I watch her flustered expression and ask in confusion, "Aren't you joining? Help fulfill your mother's last wish too." She bites her lip, clutching the urn tightly. I sigh softly, "Yvonne, you always said your daughter was the most obedient and loved you the most, yet now she won't even help with your final wish. And here I even bought her a limited edition gift." Wendy takes a deep breath, grabs a handful of ashes, and fiercely scatters them into the river. Tears streaming down her face, she keeps murmuring, "Mom, rest in peace." I watched quietly as she finished scattering all the ashes, praising her for doing well. "Where is Uncle Henry's ashes?" she asked carefully, rubbing her swollen eyes. "He has always been with us." His ashes had long been poured down the drain, and the sewage circles the entire city, so indeed, he is always with us. Returning home, Wendy moved into my daughter's room, reverting to that eerily docile demeanor. "Mom's ashes are gone now. From now on, you're my only mother." I suppressed the darkness in my eyes and smiled without responding. For the following week, she lived within the beautiful fantasy I'd woven for her. Endless gourmet food, dresses bought on whims, and even hosting her classmates for singing and fun at a luxury karaoke lounge. Everyone envied her, resented her. Her attitude toward my daughter grew increasingly smug, sometimes even daring to openly drive wedges between us. My daughter watched all this, first making a fuss before gradually growing silent, and finally asking to go abroad for a study tour. Under normal circumstances, I would have agreed, but this time, I refused, because the lesson I needed to teach her was far more valuable than any study tour. On a weekend morning, Wendy was eating freshly baked egg tarts while discussing travel plans with me. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. She obediently went to answer it, and the moment the door opened, an aged voice called out, "Wendy, so you really are here. Who is it?" I got up to check and saw Wendy, her face full of panic, trying to shut the door immediately. But the door was pulled open forcefully, and my secretary appeared respectfully before me. "Boss, we've confirmed that these two are Wendy's grandparents. They wish to take custody of Wendy." Behind her stood two elderly people, hunched over but with sharp, shrewd eyes, nodding obsequiously at me. "They are not my grandparents," Wendy cried out, shaking her head, only to have her hand slapped hard by her grandmother, causing half an egg tart to fall to the ground. "Aren't you forgetting your elders now that you've grown up? You used to love Grandma the most when you were little." Her grandmother pulled her toward the house, accidentally crushing the egg tart underfoot. "You're not my grandma, don't touch me." Wendy struggled desperately but couldn't break free. "You have a red birthmark on your butt, we've all seen it," her grandfather said, grabbing her other arm and dragging her toward the couch. Her daughter, somewhat excited, nodded in agreement. "I've seen the birthmark on her but when we bathed." "You really are her family." I flipped through the documents my secretary handed me and gestured for them to sit. But her grandmother immediately slapped Wendy twice, then turned to the bodyguards behind her and apologized to me. "Victoria, we're sorry. We just found out she's been stubbornly staying at your place. We'll discipline her properly when we get back." Wendy covered her face and pushed them away, speaking with righteous indignation, "I'm not stubbornly staying. Aunt Victoria was the one who asked me to remain." I sighed helplessly. She said she has no relatives left, and Yvonne was my closest friend. I had no choice. Her grandmother instantly turned vicious, grabbing her hair and giving her another scolding. "Aren't we your family? How did our family raise such an ungrateful wretch like you?" Wendy screamed and resisted, while I pretended not to see and asked my daughter if she wanted some fruit. My daughter looked at me in confusion at my indifference, and I simply smiled calmly at her. Because these two elderly people were actually the ones I had sought out. Ever since my husband and Yvonne were cremated, I knew Wendy would come knocking. If I couldn't find a suitable place for her, she would cling to us for life. I had no intention of raising someone else's child again. Yvonne might not have had relatives, but that didn't mean Wendy's father didn't have family. A family that favored sons over daughters, grandparents who doted on boys, an uncle addicted to gambling, an aunt who spoiled her son rotten, and a violent cousin. Life was a constant struggle, never knowing where the next meal would come from. What a perfect fit for Wendy's family. I had someone discreetly inform Wendy's uncle that she had inherited her parents' house, and selling it would clear all their debts. To get the house, I must obtain custody of Wendy. Now that Wendy is stubbornly staying with another family, it's the perfect opportunity. Sure enough, this family couldn't sit still and came knocking on my door themselves. When Wendy was completely disheveled, her face swollen beyond recognition, with scratch marks covering even her neck. I cleared my throat and spoke with concern, "But neither of you have any income, how are you going to raise Wendy?" Wendy's eyes lit up as she pointed at them and snapped, "You two old fools can't even take care of yourselves, yet you have the nerve to talk about raising me." Her grandmother quickly defended, "Afraid I might refuse, but my son and daughter-in-law have jobs. We have a house and land, we could even afford to raise 2 more kids." The secretary nodded at me, and I looked at Wendy understandingly. "Since you have family, I certainly can't separate you. Go ahead and pack your things, you're going home with your grandparents." Wendy stared at me, her eyes bloodshot, shaking her head repeatedly, "No, I won't leave. This is my home." My daughter smirked contemptuously and pointed at the 2 elderly people standing nearby, "You're not my parents' daughter. How could this possibly be your home? Their house is your home." Wendy lost control and screamed at everyone, "My father is Henry." The entire room fell silent as everyone stared at me in disbelief. My face instantly turned cold. "Wendy, you can't just latch onto my husband just because you've stayed at my place for a few days. If you claim to be my husband's child, do you have a paternity test?" Wendy stammered and couldn't get a word out. Back then, I had been in a hurry to cremate Yvonne and my husband precisely to prevent them from suddenly changing their minds. A paternity test would mean she could take half the money. My dad told me himself that I'm his only daughter. I waved my hand dismissively, feigning anger. "I took you in out of pity, but I never expected you to be this kind of person. Get out of here right now, I don't want to see your face." Wendy's grandmother stood up in fury, grabbed the water glass beside her, and splashed it in Wendy's face. "You shameless bitch, just like your mother's rotten bloodline. We're still alive, and you already want to call someone else your father?" Wendy screamed in pain, but it only earned her harsher punishment. The luggage was quickly packed, and 4 bodyguards dragged the sobbing, screaming Wendy out. Her grandmother tried to say more, but I cut her off. Wendy's been corrupted by Yvonne's bad influence. I watched her scatter her own mother's ashes into the river with my own eyes. "You'll need to straighten her out properly." She nodded hurriedly. As my secretary saw her out, she added the instructions I'd given. "My boss has a kind heart, that outfit Wendy's wearing costs over 10,000. I saw the familiar glint of greed in her grandmother's eyes. Sure enough, the moment they stepped out of my yard, the grandparents viciously grabbed at Wendy, desperately trying to strip off her clothes. "What are you doing?" Wendy screamed in despair. Just as they turned the corner, they ran into her classmates, the very ones she had invited to KTV. "Hey, Wendy, who are these old geezers? So shabby and filthy, they reek of poverty. They're calling you granddaughter because they're your grandparents. You said your grandparents were university professors? Liar. You filthy liar. What happened to your face? Did someone hit you? Looks disgusting." Wendy, stripped of her coat, shivered in her thin blouse against the autumn wind while enduring her classmates' taunts and laughter. A thunderclap sounded, and the autumn rain instantly drenched her like a drowned rat. The illusory dream shattered. Only when crashing onto the hard ground of reality did she realize the pain cut bone deep. Only the villa remained with just me and my daughter. She stared blankly as the farce came to an end, her lips parting in confusion, yet no words escaped her. I gazed at the heavy raindrops outside the window, recalling the final moments of my past life. Wendy's grandparents were people I found, and their kindness toward Wendy was all fake. I told my daughter about Wendy's family situation, then recounted the tragedies of my previous life to her as though they were just a story. Gigi, don't harm yourself out of pity for others, and don't lose control of your emotions because of someone else. It's easy to fall into a carefully laid trap. What you beg from others will always belong to them. Just as I can give it to Wendy, I can just as easily take it back. Only by holding wealth in your own hands can you ensure no one can snatch it away. If this apartment were yours, Wendy wouldn't be able to steal your room, she wouldn't even have the right to stand here. The lesson I learned at the cost of 2 lives, I hope my daughter won't repeat the mistakes I made back then. The more my daughter listened, the firmer her gaze became. After thinking for a while, she nodded and said, "Mom, I understand. I will slowly grow stronger and hold on to what is mine." I looked at her with relief, exhaling deeply as I glanced around the quiet home. From now on, we'll live well. First, let's renovate this house. Your room will be changed to the blue you like. Yay! The pink room had been the style my husband preferred, or rather, Yvonne's dream version of a child's room. These eyesores should disappear along with the eyesores who brought them here. A week later, my daughter and I moved to a different house. "Mom, can I keep learning to paint?" My daughter packed her things, her eyes full of longing as she looked at the box of art supplies. In my past life, I believed painting was useless and forced her to study finance instead. But she was miserable, she hated everything about it. This time, I just want my daughter to live happily. Of course. Not only that, but I've also booked tickets for an international art exhibition next month. We'll go together. Time flew by, and my daughter's exceptional talent in painting led her to smoothly enroll in the country's top art academy. My career also flourished in sync with the economic cycles. To secure my daughter's future, I gradually expanded my company's investments into the art market, steadily establishing our foothold in the art industry. Over the years, I've also heard news about Wendy. She was taken back to a remote hometown by her grandparents and wasn't allowed to attend school. They locked her in the house, forcing her to hand over Yvonne's property. But how could Wendy possibly agree? So these people, bound to her by blood, devised every possible way to bully and torment her. The villagers all thought she deserved it when they found out she had scattered her mother's ashes with her own hands. 2 years later, she finally couldn't hold on any longer and surrendered everything. She thought those beasts would be satisfied once they got the money. But she forgot, desire knows no bounds. When Wendy's grandparents realized they couldn't squeeze any more money out of her, they turned their attention to selling her instead. In a more remote mountain area, there was a blind old man willing to pay tens of thousands just to marry someone and father a son. Without a second thought, they married Wendy off to him, took the money, and never cared whether she lived or died. It was said that later, Wendy kept giving birth but never delivered a son, until she finally did. But she died on the delivery bed. The old man considered her unlucky and dumped her body in the wilderness. She died while I was attending my daughter's graduation ceremony, preparing to accompany her abroad for studies. At the airport, a breaking news report interrupted the broadcast. Dr. Miles from Central City Hospital overmedicated patients, leading to multiple organ failure. Investigations revealed Miles colluded with drug representatives. The case will be transferred to judicial authorities. In this lifetime, without my assistance, Miles remained just an attending physician. Ultimately, he walked down the path of no return. But these matters are no longer my concern. My family and friends are what truly deserve my care and attention. Mom, we can board now. I looked at my daughter and smiled. Nodding to show I understood, I then strode forward. The sunlight fell upon us, marking the beginning of a new chapter.